Hi there, welcome along. Today I'm going to be making a start on this Encore Models 32003 Fokker F.1 Dreidecker flown by Voss. I've read a bit about him now, and yeah, quite an interesting guy. The one thing I did pick up on was that the aircraft he flew, 10317, as depicted down here on the instructions, had a different engine. They captured a Leron 9J engine, and I noticed this kit doesn't actually use the plastic engine, it uses the resin engine, so that could be why. So the first thing I'm going to do is a lot of parts which aren't used, and what I like to do is get them off the sprues just to save any mistakes going forward. So, you know, it saves you accidentally picking up the wrong part. So first of all, if you look at this sprue up here, these ailerons aren't used, so I'm going to get rid of them. Like that. Now, is that all 4 ailerons that aren't used, or just 2? It's all 4. So we'll get rid of these. Be handy for the spares box, some greeblies for something or other. And also this part here isn't used by the look of it. These are some wing skids, I think. Also doing this, it means that sometimes you find with kits, especially with a lot of sprues, you're holding on to a couple of, well, 3 or 4 sprues in the box. They've only got 1 or 2 pieces on them, and you, just to find at the end of the build, you could have got rid of them and made some more room in your box for putting things away. That's to be replaced by a resin cover. The resin is awful to film because of its colour, but I think you can see now, this is better today, it's got these 2 square lumps on it, whereas this one hasn't, so I think that's why they're giving you the resin part there. So that's it for that sprue, and then on this one we get rid of both of these tail planes. We don't need them. Apparently they've got a recessed area in the middle, and also there is a curve, yes, I'm reading this, there is a curved front edge on the resin which isn't on the plastic part, so we'll get rid of that. These are my little Tamiya side cutter here. They're absolutely brilliant little things. The cowl goes, so we'll cut the cowl off, and the fin. For some reason, I don't know why, but they've included a resin fin. Let's have a look. Oh, okay, it's got a smaller radius on there, look, so it's got it's slightly extended. If I put it like that, you can see that it's, you can see there the fin is slightly extended. They really have thought of accuracy on this kit. Good. Nice to see somebody taking the time. And then for the final sprue of parts we don't need, it's this prop, which is good because it'll give me something to practice on for the painting. I also noticed on these they've got some pretty nasty sink marks. I mean, this one's got a bloody hole in it, look. The elevator here isn't used. Not quite sure what the difference is. This plastic feels a bit soft. I've actually, it's unusual for me, I've actually washed it in a bath of detergent because it was quite oily. You can see the watermarks on it there. So yeah, I've washed the resin and all the plastic parts. So that's that dealt with. I'll get all those put away and then we'll start looking at assembly. Right, so I'm going to start with the some work on the cockpit. You have to excuse the light with this manual, it's glossy all the way through, so you keep getting reflections. And the first thing it's telling us to do is take these 2 frames off. They're both the same part, but if you look here closely, it's telling you to remove a little nub from either side to make each one handed. So I'll remove these parts off the sprue, get them cleaned up, and then we'll have a look at them. Just thought I'd show you quickly how I go about cleaning up these small round section parts. I noticed Paul from ISM has been doing a tutorial session, which is great, on the model cars, and on there he talked about doing the roll cage and removing the mould line. There's a seam around the parts, and yeah, he suggested that one way of doing it is with a knife, and it's not the best because you end up with a flat spot. Well, that's true if you go gouging in, but if you just very gently scrape away until the mould line's gone. I'm literally putting no pressure on here whatsoever, just literally just rubbing at it just to remove most of the mould line, and then go around the inside as well. Like so. Then I use these flory sanding sticks, and this is a really soft sponge, and as you'll see when I sand over it, you can see how much the sponge distorts around the round part. I mean, UMP sell something very similar. You get these sort of pretty much anywhere really, but I use the flory ones because I've got loads of them, and I used to be a member on the Flory website, and he did a deal for his club members. So yeah, that's one way of getting rid of the mould seams. And another thing I do, I think I've done this before, but it's actually quite a good one. You take your extra thin and you get most of the glue off, and then you literally just run over, and yes, I am touching it because there's that little glue, it dries that quick. Just run over what you've just cleaned up, and if there's any little tiny bits of plastic dust or whatever little slithers of plastic on there, they'll be gone. And that's how you get these little tiny parts cleaned up. And here we go again, using the sponge around the outside edge of this round tubular frame, just to remove the seam line and not leave any flat spots behind. And then I'm going to get my extra thin, remove most of it off the brush, and then just literally go around the edge. Well, you can see how little I'm putting on, I can touch that already. So that's that done. Those two little frames are now glued onto that bulkhead there, and then the seat will sit down in between them, like so. Like that. And then I don't want to fit the seat yet because I need to paint all this and then mask up the linen and then paint the RLO2 grey frame. I also need to make something for the seat. The seat is shown here as a basic, just a basic shape, but it should have a leather lining in it. I believe they didn't have parachutes. Later in the war they did, but in these days I don't think they had parachutes. So it basically says, and if I've pulled some out of the wing instructions for a Fokker D7 early, and it's a similar setup, and it's showing you here that there's a part A27 in their kit. There's a leather seat squab, and it says not used when parachute carried. I don't think they carried a parachute, so it would have had a leather seat. Again, much like the photos I've got from the Wingnut Wings website, which is showing a Fokker with this red leather seat, and it's also got the leather padding around the sides. So I've never used this stuff before. I think it's like milliput. I've got loads of it. It comes in these two packets, so I'll be cutting off equal lengths, knead it together and using it like milliput to make a cushion. So I'll show you how I get on with that when I've done it. Moving on with the kit here, you can see that it says here see page 7 for optional photo etch installation. So if we go to page 7, we can see we've got the Edard, not Edard, it's Squadron, but they're telling you that you've got to put the harnesses onto two little brackets that mount on the bulkhead there. So what I'm going to do is measure the width of the harnesses apart, remove these bits from the fret, and then make some grooves or little slots or something for these to glue into. Otherwise you're just going to get knocked off as soon as you touch them. So I'll see you in a second once I've done that. So I've measured the harness, and the harness here is 7.4 millimeters apart. So if we assume I'm going to keep that piece in there straight, which I am, then we need to go, this is 20 millimeters wide, so 7.4 leaves 12.6 millimeters. So if I go 6.3 in from either side, then I can mark it up like that. Now here's another little tip for you. Take a piece of, if you don't want to damage the part, to mark something out, take a piece of Tamiya masking tape, and you will see that it's quite easy to make a mark on it, like so. If you see there, you can see that those marks are clear. Now, I haven't damaged the plastic at all, but I've marked where these cuts need to be made. So it's another little tip for you. So all I'm doing here is getting roughly to the centre of the steel tube section and just making a cut in the plastic, which will give the small photo etch part something to stick into rather than just having it stuck on the surface. So I don't know if the camera's going to pick that up, but there is just a tiny slit in there. Right, so you can see we've got our hard base here for cutting our photo etch on. I've got the photo etch itself. I've got a drop of super glue in a Pringles lid. Another little tip for you: you can put super glue in a Pringles lid, and then when you finish with it, just break the super glue off and reuse it. It's better than having a piece of masking tape down here and putting your elbow in it. And I've also got one of these little wicking devices for picking up your super glue. You just use it, and then after it's just clean it off with a knife. And if you can catch it in there, you can see it's got like a slit in the end that picks up the super glue through capillary action. So the first thing I do is take this these parts off. I just need a couple of these, which is parts 36, yeah, these here. So I'm going to, using this little tool, I'm going to cut the knife facing in, go in and cut like into the fret. On the bottom I'm going to leave a little bit of extra trim on there, which gives, again, that will give me something more to stick into the seat. So that one didn't quite come off. It's the top that's holding it. So go around again. And this little tool, it comes with, from Little Cars, you get this little set. You get this to hold the fret, and obviously the hard base to cut on. And it's very handy because it stops it flicking off for the smaller parts like these. So I find the best way to pick these up is just wet your finger, and I'm going to put it in my tweezers. Like so. Blimey, it's smaller than I thought it was. Okay, now there's a slight little bit of a tab left on the top of there. Just clean that off. Now I want to turn it round. Oh, dear, 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 this is tiny. Where are the tweezers? These tweezers are better, they've got a point on them. So I want to just get on the top of it. Luckily they give you 4 of these, you get a couple of spares just in case. Now that little nib I've left on the bottom there, you can see, that should help to stick it in the seat. I am just going to cut a tiny little touch off it. So there we go. So what I can do now is, keeping hold of that, take the seat frame, get some super glue, put it into the, get enough glue on there, put it into the gap like so, and then push this one in. This is so difficult doing this on camera. And now it's stuck to the tweezers, great. So there we go, that's in there and sitting upright, you can see there. And if you noticed, I did put quite a lot of super glue on. Now the reason for that is this cut that's in the seat is quite long and wide, so I want the super glue to fill it up, and then I can sand the shape back, get the shape back, so so it's a tubular section, and with a bit of excess glue it also makes it look a bit of a weld as well. So let's do the same now with the other one. So we got those two bits of photo etched brass on there. You can see the state of my fingers, you can guess what I've been doing. So yeah, they're on there now, they're the little hooks, and they line up, as you can see, they line up lovely with the harness when it's ready to put them on. And also remember the seat was plain. It was my first ever having a go with this Tamiya epoxy putty stuff. It's extremely sticky, and I've lined up the seat with some of it, rolled it out, and trying to get like a leather effect on it. There we go. So yeah, I think when it's painted and weathered and that, I think it'll look a lot better. But I've tried to copy what the wings part looks like from their instructions. So that's parts 1A, 1B and 1C done, except for gluing the seat in. So yeah, back in a sec. Right, moving on to step 2 now. I'm assuming this is a fuel tank, not an oil tank. You have to add a second filler cap for this version. I guess it was for quicker refills. And you can see here that you have to drill a hole for it, and you have the extra resin filler that goes on there. A couple of things to note. This is drawn the wrong way round. So they've got it drawn that way, look, with the legs there, when it should be that way, the legs sticking out the side. And also, looking at where the coals come out, it's parallel. So they're telling you here 3/32 of an inch. It's actually 3 millimeters, and it's this 2.4 here, 2.4 millimeters, which is the 3/32 of an inch. And they're telling you to drill it number 61. I've actually drilled that with a 1.3 mil drill, and yeah, that's just the right size for the resin part to just push into the hole like that. One other issue, you can see when you turn over the instructions, you can see that the resin filler has the little legs on the top, the same as the plastic part does. But the problem is, the part is attached to the sprue, or the mould plug, by the top. So there's a great square of resin stuck to the top of it, and I can't pick it up, but there's a square of resin stuck to the top of that. So how are you going to remove that and leave those little legs on? So we'll have to assume this one's been broken. So I need to get all this together now, and then get that sprayed up with some aluminium. Okay guys, been moving on with this one now. I've decided I'm not going to try and do any building on the camera unless it's major construction. The fine stuff like the photo etch and that, it's just impossible when you've got a camera between, and I usually work under a magnifying glass thing with a light anyway, so I really struggle, and I make mistakes, and I'm going to cut myself, and I'm keep going off camera, and I'm going to show you the wrong way to do things, I expect. So yeah, got the fuselage halves painted. The instructions call for linen, which they say is XF60, which is dark yellow. I sprayed it, didn't like the look of it too much, so I just went over it. I just fogged over it with some XF57 buff just to sort of cover that up a bit. I haven't got rid of these ejector pin marks in the back because you're not going to see them basically. This is the bulkhead that the seat mounts onto, and there's those bits of photo etch in the top there that you can see, and you can see that the way I did that, I slit that top open and then filled the slots with super glue, sanded it all back to shape again, and it's yeah, it's quite nice. So yeah, it means they're not just going to ping off every time you touch them. There's the seat. Kind of started to go off now. Here we go, focus problems again. I don't get this. Don't get why this camera will not focus it sometimes. So yeah, I've done the base. There you go. Got the base there sorted. I'll show you when it's all painted and everything. But it's yeah, it rolls over the edge like the leather does, and yeah. Never used that Tamiya stuff before. Probably won't ever use it again. It's bloody sticky and it just sticks to everything it touches. I've also done some of the silver work. This is just a quick rough silver coat inside the cowling, underneath the oil tank cover. This is resin. Yeah, I've just done these to, as it calls that in the instruction, they're basically sprayed as the ammo bins there, with the tops thinned out. I'm not sure how much of this is going to be seen. That's why I haven't made too much fuss about them. But they're painted with Vallejo metal colours, dull aluminium, which comes out really shiny like chrome. And then what I do is I give it a coat of Tamiya satin varnish, and it tones it down a bit. But yeah, I mean, none of this really gets seen. It's all undercover. So there's the bulkhead there, the engine bulkhead. So yeah, I haven't made too much fuss about that. So there we are for now. Next thing I need to do is let this go off and get it masked up and get the frame painted. I've got to put some photo etch in here and do some plywood effect. I'll show you how I do the plywood because it's something that people ask a lot. It's very simple. I use oils. I don't like using acrylics for it, and each to their own. I like doing it with oils, and I'll show you how I do it. So yeah, thanks for looking. Back in a minute.